All right, I'll start with this. Anyone else feeling super overwhelmed at the flurry of activity that is happening with AI right now? It seems like every couple of weeks there's this transformational shift. Honestly, personally, I go between wonder and terror like several times a day right now. But here's what I realized. It's not the innovation itself that feels unsettling. It's actually the speed. The speed is relentless, and it can make you feel like you're falling behind just by blinking. But here's the thing that I keep coming back to. The real promise of AI isn't that it does things for you. It's actually that it lets you build things that you could never build before. Things that actually fit your life. That is agency, and that to me is what cuts through the noise. So instead of doom scrolling through the hype, I actually built myself a tool, a simple system that searches the web, academic journals, and news sources every week on a topic that I personally care deeply about, which is the intersectionality of mental health and AI. And what this tool does, is it filters it through my own perspective, scores it for credibility, and delivers a clean digest straight to my inbox on a weekly basis. No sensationalism, no clickbait, just the stuff that actually matters to me, summarized in the way that matches how I think. And I built this super quickly using Claude Code, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to build one for yourself for whatever topic that you care about. Along the way, you'll also learn how to actually use Claude Code effectively, the workflow and best practices that really separate people who get frustrated from people who can actually ship real things. Let's get started. Right, so here is our game plan. We're building a system that does the following things automatically. So step one, it searches the web, academic journals, and news sources for your specific topic. Again, I'm using mental health in AI as my topic, but you could swap this for literally anything. Step two, it filters everything through your lens. Not just, is this relevant, but is this relevant to how I think about this topic? For me, we're going to use the builder's lens, and I'll get into what that actually means for me, but it could be any kind of lens that works for you. Step three, it sources for credibility, and it deduplicates so you're not rereading the same recycled story 5 times. Step four, it will generate a clean digest with summaries and why it matters in bullets written from your perspective. And step five, it'll send this to you via email. And we can set this up so it runs automatically every week. The whole thing is intended to run automatically. And what's great is we could build on this and set it up so that way it can actually get smarter the more you use it. But more importantly, along the way, I'm going to show you some Claude best practices that will make you way more effective, not just for this project, but for anything you build. Let's get into it. Now, if you don't know me, I'm Sunny. I'm a serial founder now on my 4th startup. Also, I'm a former senior engineer at Bloomberg and Shopify, and currently an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where I teach tech. I've been building in tech for over 15 years, well before AI. And my goal for this video, and really all my videos, is to help you make sense of all the things happening within the tech landscape right now, and to make using these tools more accessible for everyone. Let's get started with our first step. All right, but first, let's talk about Claude Code. So if you've been anywhere near tech Twitter right now in the past few weeks, you know that Claude Code is having its moment. So a Google engineer, pretty senior Google engineer, recently posted that Claude Code built in 1 hour what her team spent an entire year building. That tweet got over 5 million views and counting. Definitely everyone's calling this Anthropic's ChatGPT moment. So obviously this tool is getting a lot of attention. So now is a really good time to just get our hands dirty with it and just really see what makes sense and what is actually hype. So to use Claude Code, there's a couple of different ways you can use it. The way that I'm going to use it, and what I would suggest, is actually using the desktop app. So you will need a basic Claude subscription, and then you can go over to claude.ai and then download the desktop app. The desktop app is going to look something like this, and then what you're going to do is you're going to click on this Code tab, and then click New Session, and then we can actually get started. Okay, before I actually type anything or do anything, I want to share the single most important thing I've learned working with Claude Code. Listen, most people, and myself included, have made this mistake a lot. They jump straight into asking Claude to write code. Build me a research digest. Make me a web scraper. And Claude will do it. It'll start coding like immediately. But here's the thing, that almost never is the best first move. So the official Anthropic best practices from the engineers who actually built Claude Code, they recommend a workflow called explore, plan, code, commit. It's right here in the best practices document from Anthropic themselves. And when you think about it, it makes total sense. It's very intuitive. If you hired a junior engineer and on day one you said, go build me a research digest tool, you wouldn't want them to start coding immediately. You'd want them to ask questions first. What sources are we pulling from? What does the output look like? How often does it run? Like, why do you actually want this tool? You'd want them to understand the deeper problem before they touch the keyboard. And Claude is the same way. It's incredibly capable, but it doesn't know what you actually want until you tell it. And if you tell it to start coding before it understands the full picture, you're going to spend way more time course correcting later on. The investment you make up front in that exploration phase and planning phase pays off 10 times over when you get to implementation. So let's actually get started using Claude Code. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder. So I have a little apps folder on my computer. This is where I have all the apps that I create. And in this folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder called Research Digest. Now, this will be a blank folder that we have. And then I'm going to go back into my Claude Code session, and I'm going to select the folder that I want to basically build this app in. So it's an empty folder. So that's kind of the first step. Okay, so now that we've set up the folder, let's actually paste in my first prompt here. Let me read it first. So I want to build a weekly research digest system that is focused on the intersectionality of AI and mental health. Of course, that topic can be swapped out to whatever you want. Before writing any code, I want you to explore what tools and APIs are available for searching academic sources, news, RSS feeds, think through the architecture, what components do we need, create a plan for how we'll build this step by step. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is this little toggle here. So you have three modes. You can kind of ask Claude Codes to do, ask it questions. It won't do anything. You can also be in act mode where it will actually do the coding. And then you'll be in plan mode where it actually defines a plan before it actually executes. So I'm actually going to go ahead and select plan mode because we're at the beginning of this project. We kind of want to plan everything out. And another thing I want to just mention here is that what is so powerful about Claude Code is that not only can it code, but it can also research for you. It can also get information about, for example, what tools and APIs are available for you to pull sources from. It can also think through the architecture. It can think through what is a good format for the research digest. And this is really incredible because it's like an interdisciplinary expert that is almost like an expert at so many different things. And the magic here is kind of connecting all these different disciplines together to build something that is extremely useful for you. So let's go ahead and send this over. So what is happening right now is it's actually asking us if it can search the web for all of these specific queries. Again, what is amazing here is that it's going to go out and do the research for us. So we will go ahead and allow all of these queries. Okay, so it's still creating the plan. It's taking a bit of time, which is a good thing. But as it's building the plan, it's actually asking us some questions. So it's asking us, which email delivery service would you prefer to use for sending the digest? So Claude Code in of itself is not able to send emails. It will require a third-party integration to actually send those emails. It's suggesting SendGrid, which we can use, and I'll show you how to set up SendGrid in a moment. So let's actually just go with the recommended approach. Do we have any API keys for any other services? Maybe in the future, but for now, we're going to say no API keys. So no API keys. So we'll just go for like the free sources that are available to us. So that way we don't have to get any other API keys. Good thing to note here is that when you're building anything, we want to optimize for speed to getting something live. So that's why I'm just trying to remove as many hurdles as possible. So we'll go design for free here. Okay, so it took like 10 or 15 minutes to actually put together this plan. So let's actually review what it actually does. Again, always a good idea to at least be able to skim through what Claude Code is doing so you can kind of be an active participant in the build process. So let's scroll up. So this is what our initial prompt was. And basically, the first things that it did is it did research. And again, that is the magic of Claude Code. It's doing all this research in advance for you to ultimately produce a better result, a better output. And what it did is it did research in 3 different areas. So it basically did research in terms of finding any APIs out there, specifically for academic research-based sources, so that way we can get like highly credible sources here. It also tried to find any news sources that have a way to kind of pull in the news very easily and in a free way. And then it also researched design systems, design patterns for how should we architect something like this. So it put everything together. This is the plan it put together. Let's actually take a look at it. So it's going to use Python, which is great. I always suggest Python. This is the architecture. It's basically saying these are all of the data sources that we're going to get that initial research from. Then it's going to put it through this little pipeline. We're going to store it in some kind of database. And then ultimately, we will have some output, some summarized output that will then be sent to us via email. This is the tech stack. We don't have to get too much into the details. We should certainly have a good understanding of where we're getting the data. This is just for version 1. Of course, we may want to add more sources as we uncover them in the future, maybe podcasts, maybe YouTube channels, maybe even Twitter accounts. But this is a good start. And then it kind of is going through the different phases, the file structure, and some of the queries that we're going to do. It is also presenting us with this kind of environment variable section. So this is very important because this is going to hold our API keys. So we are integrating with APIs, third-party APIs. Some of these APIs we need something, others we don't. Like, for example, with these APIs, these are optional because it's free. But with the email delivery, as I mentioned, we are going to be using something called SendGrid. So we actually have to create an account. We might have to put down a credit card. It'll be negligible in terms of how much it'll cost per email. We may not even need to put down a credit card, which we'll know in a moment. But we will need to create an account, and we will need to grab an API key that we can then input into this file right here. And that's pretty much it. That all looks generally good to me. But before we proceed with building, I do want to talk about something I've noticed in terms of the build process that Claude Code tends to do right now. Of course, this could change in a few months, change in a few weeks. But it is true that Claude Code tends to over-engineer things. And this tool that we're building, we really need to be biased towards as simple as possible, because the tool that we're building is really not something that we want to make commercially available. We're just building this for ourselves here. We are just going to be a single user. So the more simple, the better, because then we can keep things very flexible. And in fact, if you go to the documentation from Anthropic, It also does tell you very explicitly that Claude Opus 4.5 has a tendency to over-engineer by creating extra files, adding unnecessary abstractions, or building in flexibility that wasn't requested. So this is really significant. Anthropic is pretty much being honest and clear and candid that their model tends to over-engineer. And I find this to be indicative of all the models out there because they all kind of behave somewhat similarly. So it's something that you want to be aware of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Claude Code and I'm going to type this prompt. Before we start coding, I want you to review the plan with fresh eyes. Remember, this is a personal tool that runs once a week just for me. Doesn't need to scale, doesn't need to handle edge cases, it'll never hit. Is there anything in this plan that's over-engineered for that use case? Any abstractions we don't need? Any flexibility that's just adding complexity? Be ruthless, simpler is better. So I'm going to go ahead and send that over, and maybe we'll get a revised plan that will be simpler. Okay, so it has some ideas on what to cut. This all looks good. It's asking me, would you like to revise the plan? And I will say, yes. So while that's running, this is a good time to address this one point. Why can't you just build this research agent or do this research digest agent in ChatGPT? Listen, here's the deal. ChatGPT is amazing for answering questions, but what we're building is a system. The leverage here comes from three things that a simple AI chat interface cannot do. So first, automated retrieval. It goes and finds the sources weekly without you asking. That's huge. Second, consistent filtering. So same rubric, same quality bar, every single time. We have that consistent filtering system. And third, probably the most important, memory and deduplication. You don't reread the same recycled story that's been repurposed by 15 different outlets. Remember, the LLM is just one component of it. The system that we're building is the real value. So it has simplified our plan. Let's just take a quick look. So when you see these colors, like the red and green, what this indicates is that it's basically anything in red here is indicating that it's been deleted from our plan. And then anything in green is anything that's been added. So it's basically just done a completely different version of it. Before it was 199 lines, now it's 100 lines. So much simpler. We can actually see the plan by clicking the plan right here, fetching the papers, fetching news, skip anything you've already seen, sort by date. This already looks significantly simpler. Okay, but before we build this out, I do want to add one more thing to the plan. I want to make sure that everything is filtered through my lens, right? I was talking about this earlier. So this is the prompt I'm going to paste. Before we build this out, I want to add some more context. Let's define the builder's lens for this digest. I want to create a configuration that captures my perspectives and worldviews, the types of insights I find valuable, questions I'm asking, what's actionable. And here is like kind of the cheat sheet that I'm giving to the model, to the agent, on what my worldview is. So I'm a builder who believes technology should reduce friction in accessing mental health, tools being valuable insights around tools being built, research with real world applications, policy changes affecting. These are things that are important to me. Key questions, actionable means. So before we build it, I also want to add just that one layer of depth. So that way I'm not just getting generic AI advice, I'm getting like an AI generated summary that really is customized for me. Okay, so it updated the plan. Let's take a look at what it did. Yeah, so now it's adding in the lens perspective in this file right here. It's actually incorporated into the plan. Let's go ahead and build this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the act mode, and I'm just going to indicate let's move forward with the plan. Now, while that's running, this is a good time to introduce SendGrid. So super simple, SendGrid facilitates sending emails in a programmatic way. What that means is we can send an email through code, through an agent, which is what we want. I'm going to click start for free here, and I'll go ahead and sign up. Okay, so once you have an account, all you need to do is you do need to get approved. But until then, you can just grab your API key here. If you go to settings, then go to API keys, you can create a new API key. We'll call it the research digest key, just so we know what this is for. And then we will copy it and then save it for later use. Okay, so it looks like it's done with building, which is awesome. And it actually ran, it did its first run in the code, and you'll see it got 46 items, 46 relevant articles to our topic, picked up specific papers on chatbot interventions, digital remote monitoring, etc., and then pasted it here. The next thing we need to do is we need to enable email, and so it was able to add the API key, but I realized that we actually need the email from, which needs to be a verified sender on SendGrid. So if I go back to SendGrid, and if I go to settings and sender authentication, I realize I actually have to verify where this email is coming from, which will be my email address. It's kind of circular because it's coming from my email address, but it's also going to my email address. So let's go ahead and do this. And then once we set that up, it'll send a verification email, which we will then verify. Great. So now that it's verified, I'm going to go back to Claude Code and supply the from and to. It's going to be the same email because it's all coming to me. So the from and to email is going to be my email. It says it was sent. Let's take a look. So we got our mental health digest delivered to our inbox. No sensationalism, no clickbait. Some kings here and there, like the not available, but this is great. And we can read the full paper if we really want to. This is a good start to our tool. So this is actually a great time to mention something that's actually been on my mind lately. We've actually entered this era where building personal software is not just possible, it's actually quite practical. And this has a lot of major implications. Everyone's been trying to build the next SaaS that scales to millions of users, but here's my broader take. Some of the most valuable software that you'll ever use is software nobody will ever see. A research digest tuned exactly to your interest. A meal planner that knows your dietary restrictions and preferences to a T. A journaling system with your specific prompts. This stuff used to require a developer or months of learning. Now you can build it in an afternoon with Claude Code, which is incredibly exciting and a major unlock. The question isn't, can I build this anymore? It's, what do I actually need? All right, let's take a step back and look at what we just built. In less than an hour, we now have a system that does a lot of things. It searches multiple credible sources every week. It filters through your lens, your worldview, your priorities. It scores for credibility. It generates a digest that speaks your language, and it sends it straight to your inbox. We did not get a chance to get to scheduling the job yet, but we will do that in a future video. But I want to make this point. This isn't just a static tool. It's a tool that can really evolve with you. More importantly, though, what we learned is about the workflow of working with Claude. Things like researching before the code actually works, like asking Claude to explore and plan first. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to build this. I want you to build it for your thing, the topic that you're excited about, in your lens. And on the point of lens, these are some other lens examples that you could maybe work off of. Maybe you're not coming from it from a builder perspective. Maybe you're coming at it from a concerned parent perspective. Maybe you're coming at it from a contrarian investor perspective. Whatever lens works for you, build it with that in mind. And once you've built something, please drop it in the comments, put it on Twitter. I genuinely want to see what you are building from your perspective. I'll leave you with this, the bigger lesson. We talk a lot about AI replacing jobs and building billion-dollar companies with no one even in the picture. But some of the most powerful uses of AI are way more personal than that. It's building tools that think like you, tools that learn from you, tools that nobody else will ever use because they're tuned to your specific brain. That's not a small thing. That's kind of the whole point. Now, if you stuck around till the end of this video, I appreciate you. I will see you on the next video.